Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the ZinovyMed Podcast. I'm Dr. Ilya Rabkin. Today, we're going to look at how different diets manage the same metabolic switches and how to use that understanding to build a lifelong strategy instead of chasing quick fixes. If you've spent more than 5 minutes on social media lately, you've probably felt like you're being shouted at by 3 different cults. One biohacker is yelling that fasting is the only way to reverse your age. Someone else is screaming that plants are trying to destroy your gut from the inside. And a third tells you animals are attacking you, so you should only eat kale. It's exhausting, it's contradictory, and frankly, it makes people want to give up and just grab a donut. Is the broccoli trying to kill you? Is the steak? Well, today we're cutting through the noise. We're going to look at the actual science, debunk some of the wilder myths, and help you find a metabolic rhythm that actually fits your life. Let's start with a quick science lesson. To understand why any of these diets work, or why they fail, we have to look at the metabolic switches inside your cells. Imagine your body is a massive 24/7 construction site. This site has 2 distinct shifts, but here's the rule. It can only run one shift at a time. It's either in building mode, we call anabolic, or cleanup mode, catabolic. Who decides the schedule? Insulin, a major metabolic hormone. Hormones are the long-range messenger signals in our body. So we think of insulin as the construction site manager. When you eat, whether it's a bowl of pasta or a chicken breast, your body releases insulin. Now, a quick point of clarification. We're used to thinking of insulin only cares about sugar. That's not exactly true. Protein can also trigger an insulin release. It isn't as massive of a spike like the one you get from a soda, but it's there nonetheless. Think of insulin as the site manager blowing the morning whistle. He unlocks the gates and shouts, "Material's coming in, let's build." This wakes up the foreman, a molecule called mTOR. The crew starts stacking bricks, storing fat, and framing walls, building your muscles. This is essential for survival. We need to build. But if the site manager never goes home and your body stays in a constant state of building, it leads to systemic inflammation and insulin resistance. When you stop eating, insulin drops off. This allows your body to activate the repair crew, pathways called AMPK and sirtuins. This triggers autophagy, cell breakdown. Since no new materials are arriving, the crew looks for scraps. They find damaged proteins, damaged cells, broken junk. They break them down and recycle them for fuel. Every diet is just a different way to manage this switch. Now let's see how these diets stack up. Let's start with intermittent fasting, or in other words, time-restricted feeding. This is the practice of shrinking your eating window to, let's say, 8 hours a day, though some people will choose a longer time frame. From a clinical standpoint, fasting works because it lowers your average insulin levels. By keeping insulin low for 16 hours, you give those repair mechanisms more time to do their job. Many cardiologists and cardiovascular surgeons emphasize this mechanism as fasting's primary advantage. And to their credit, several studies do show modestly greater reduction in fasting insulin and glucose compared to basic calorie restriction diets alone. However, and this is the critical nuance, it is not a metabolic magic pill. When large, well-controlled trials directly compare intermittent fasting to traditional calorie restriction, overall weight loss is virtually identical when calories are matched. Fasting does not burn more fat simply because meals are delayed. It is best understood as a behavioral structure that helps some people control intake. Even more importantly, when fasting is compared to a low-carb, not necessarily keto diet, we're talking about 50 to 120 grams of carbs per day, not enough to induce ketosis, most of those metabolic advantages of fasting largely disappear because we're talking about lowering insulin. So across insulin sensitivity, fasting glucose, and triglycerides, these approaches tend to perform similarly when protein and calories are adequately controlled. Now, this is where perspective matters. Cardiovascular specialists often focus on short-term metabolic endpoints, such as markers for diabetes and heart disease. And fasting can look very compelling through that lens. But in primary care and longevity medicine, we see the downstream trade-offs. Patients who have succeeded metabolically but later struggle with muscle loss, fatigue, declining bone density due to insufficient protein intake. Metabolic improvement should not come at the expense of strength, resilience, and long-term function. So this is not a hit on intermittent fasting. This is all to say that it isn't some miracle diet with special properties. It is just a different way to manage those build and repair switches. For some people, this diet just fits their lifestyle and works for them. Now let's talk about some of the related myths we hear about intermittent fasting. One myth I've heard is that intermittent fasting prevents the loose skin people get when losing a lot of weight. You'll hear people say fasting eats your loose skin. While autophagy, cell breakdown, is real, it's a cellular process. It cleans up microscopic trash inside a cell. There is no human evidence that it can actually dissolve external skin tissue. Then there's a myth about this diet being able to target specific cells during the cleanup phase. People think fasting only targets the bad cells. The reality is that if your fast is too long and your protein intake is too low, your body will also start breaking down muscle tissue for energy. Fasting can be a very useful tool, but this leads to my biggest concern, and that is the protein window. As we age, muscle is our longevity currency. To maintain muscle, you need roughly 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight. Trying to hit that goal in a 4 to 8 hour window is incredibly difficult without feeling sick. If you're fasting so hard that you're losing muscle, you're trading long-term health for a short-term number on the scale. For those that can fast and still get enough protein, great. We just need to acknowledge that it can be tricky. Next, let's look at the Mediterranean and the whole food plant-based diets. These are less about when you eat and more about the quality of what you eat. This strategy isn't about closing the site early, it's about quiet construction. By delivering materials like fiber and antioxidants, you keep the site manager, insulin, very calm. He doesn't need to blow the whistle loudly because the materials arrive slowly and steadily. On the plate, this means a colorful foundation of vegetables, legumes, and whole grains, powered by healthy fats like extra virgin olive oil and walnuts, while fish is your primary animal protein. It's the gold standard, but only because we happen to have decades of data on this. And the data happens to show about a 30% reduction in major cardiovascular events. It's also associated with lower risks of diabetes, cancer, and even cognitive decline. It is, quite simply, an established and safe construction site. But here, too, there are some associated myths we need to discuss. The biggest one is the trap that vegan equals healthy. Listen, Oreos are vegan, sugary soda is vegan. If your plant-based diet is all starch and sugar, you're still spiking your insulin. You're keeping the building switch stuck on, but you're doing it without providing actual materials like protein. That is the recipe for becoming skinny fat, where you look thin, but you have high internal body fat and low muscle mass. And again, we need to address the protein issue. This is the part people hate to hear. To hit 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight on plants alone, you have to eat a mountain of beans. It's definitely not impossible, but for many people, that's just not practical. If you go plant forward, I highly recommend a clean protein supplement or planning your meals well. Give your foreman the bricks it needs to keep your muscles strong. Now, let's move to the low-carb extremes, keto and carnivore. While these are often grouped together, they are very different protocols. Biologically, the goal for both is to lower insulin enough to flip your metabolic switch from burning glucose to burning stored fat. The ketogenic diet. It has been around since the 1920s, first used to treat medication-resistant seizures. In a standard lifestyle keto diet, your macronutrient breakdown is usually about 70 to 75% fat, 20% protein, and only 5% carbohydrates. In real-world terms, that means keeping your total carbs under 50 grams a day, about the amount in one medium bagel. Your plate shifts dramatically. You're looking at fatty cuts of meat, salmon, and eggs, but also a heavy emphasis on plant-based fats, avocados, macadamia nuts, olive oil, and butter. You also fill the rest of your plate with non-starchy vegetables like spinach, kale, broccoli, and cauliflower. These provide the fiber and micronutrients you need without blowing your carb budget. Keto is a powerful metabolic intervention. For patients with type 2 diabetes, it can be a lifesaver. By removing the constant spikes in blood sugar, you allow your body to regain insulin sensitivity. Yes, there are myths we need to address here too. The all-you-can-eat bacon loophole. There's a misconception that as long as your carbs are zero, the quality of your food doesn't matter. the medical reality is that we have to talk about cardiovascular risk. For about 20% of people, a high saturated fat keto diet causes ApoB, a primary driver of plaque in your arteries, to skyrocket. You might fix your blood sugars, but significantly increase your heart disease risk. My advice, if you choose to go the keto route, is to prioritize fat quality. Don't just live on butter and bacon. Focus on monosaturated fats like extra virgin olive oil, avocados, and macadamia nuts to keep your cardiovascular risk low. And as always, watch that protein intake, even with this diet. Now, if keto is a restrictive diet, carnivore is an elimination diet taken to the absolute limit. You aren't just cutting sugars, you're eliminating every plant on the planet. No fiber, no fruit, no vegetables, exclusively animal products with staples like beef, pork, poultry, and certain dairy products. Why do people feel so good on this initially? Possibly because it's the nuclear option for an elimination diet. If you have a severe undiagnosed sensitivity to certain plant compounds, removing everything but steak feels like a miracle. It clears systemic inflammation for some people almost overnight. However, plants are not toxic. This is the loudest claim in the carnivore community, that plants are attacking humans with defense chemicals. The science says this is a misunderstanding of something called hormesis, a biological concept where a low dose of a typically harmful substance or stressor triggers a beneficial adaptive response, improving an organism's health, resilience, or function, while higher doses remain toxic or inhibitory. Humans have evolved to eat plants. Those defense chemicals, like polyphenols, act as a healthy stressor that actually triggers your repair mechanisms and makes your cells more resilient. We see a similar idea with exercise that causes short-term inflammation, we usually think of as bad, but ultimately is extremely beneficial. Yes, if you overindulge, you can injure yourself, cause premature joint breakdown, pain, and in extremes, even indirect kidney injury. But we all know that when done in correct amounts, it's great for us. Then there is the fiber problem. When you go full carnivore, you are completely starving your gut microbiome. Fiber is the fuel your gut bacteria uses to produce short-chain fatty acids, which protect your intestinal lining. Long-term, a fiber-free diet is a massive gamble on your digestive health. We have a century of data on keto for metabolic health. We currently have no long-term human clinical trials on a 100% meat diet. My advice, if you choose to go this route, do not guess, test. Get your blood work done regularly. Watch your ApoB as well as other lipid levels, and watch your inflammatory markers. If your labs start moving in the wrong direction, it doesn't matter how many likes the diet has on social media. It's not working for your body. So what's the bottom line? If there's one thing I want you to take away from today, it's this. Stop looking for a fix and start looking for a rhythm. The reason most people fail at dieting isn't a lack of willpower. It's because they treat nutrition like a temporary prison sentence. They go on a diet so they can eventually get off of it. But your metabolism doesn't work on a 30-day clock. It works on a lifelong continuum of building and repairing. You don't need to pick a tribe or a cult. You just need to find your balance. Respect the cycle. Give your body a break from the constant influx of energy. You don't need an extreme 24-hour fast. Just give yourself a 12 to 14-hour window every night where your insulin can settle and your cells can handle their own housekeeping. Protect your foundation. Never trade your muscle for a lower number on the scale. Prioritize protein. Aim for that 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight. Muscle is your longevity currency. It's what keeps you independent and metabolically healthy as you age. The 1-year rule. This is my ultimate metric. The best researched diet in the world is clinically worthless if you can't maintain it. Before you start a new protocol, ask yourself, can I see myself eating this way a year from today? If the answer is no, then it's not a lifestyle, it's just a distraction. In a world of influencers shouting for your attention, remember that consistency is the only real biohack. Real health isn't found in a restrictive 30-day challenge. It's found in the quiet, sustainable habits you actually enjoy. If you're a data person and want to see the clinical research behind everything we discussed, I've posted a full deep dive with all my references at ZinovyMed.com/journal. Check the research, ignore the noise, and find the rhythm that belongs to you. I'm Dr. Ilya Rabkin. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this was helpful, please subscribe, like, and share it with someone you care about. Stay consistent, stay curious, and above all, stay healthy. I'll see you in the next episode.